Summertime is out days. Summertime is out days. When it's summertime, it's out days. When it's summertime, it's out days.
Good morning, fellow stackers, investors, preppers, collectors, and citizens around the world. This is Expat Stacker coming to you all the way from South Korea. That was Southeast Summers by San Diego native Ryan Anthony. And like the song says, there's nowhere else I'd rather be. But right here with you guys, I'm happy to be joining you for another weekly Restack show. Remember that this show and my other podcast style show called the Silvercast that I do with fellow YouTuber Silver Conundrum is now available on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, and various other platforms. Links are in the description. So you can tune in and support the show while you're on the go. Please leave a positive review and rate the show wherever you listen in from. Also, next week will be the off week for this show, and I'll be back on the weekend of March 27th. Now let's get you filled in with some of this past week's events in the 8th weekly Restack show. If you're a returning listener, then welcome back, and if this is your first time joining, then welcome. Please like, share, and subscribe. In this show, I summarize and review the news of the past week in the following format. First, we do a quick 5-minute market recap of financial markets. Then we do a 5 to 10 minute finance/bullion related news segment. After that, we move on to a few minutes of world news and current events. And we finish off the show with stacking community news and notes. I can't cover all the news, but I try to get to as much as I can. My only objective is to help keep anyone who wants to listen as informed as possible. I try to be as neutral and impartial as I can, although nothing is ever truly 100% impartial. I aim to give you the facts and information, and it's up to you to decide what you think about it. Please leave your thoughts, comments, criticisms, feedback, questions, and suggestions in the comments section. I do read them and I do respond to them. So without further ado, let's get you into this past week's news. In the metals markets, gold closed this week up about 1.6%, finishing off the week at $1,726.96 per ounce. Silver was up slightly this week compared to last week by about 2.6% and finished off the week at $25.90 per ounce. Platinum popped back up this week over the $1,200 mark and finished off the week at $1,202, which is up about 6.25% from last week. Copper gained again this week, up just under 1% from last week to finish off at $4.15 per pound. Oil slipped a bit this week for the first time in several weeks, down just under 1% compared to last week, finishing off this week at $65.38 a barrel. Bitcoin is up heading into the weekend currently by just over 16% and is just under $57,000 after we saw a late week lull in trading volume. Ethereum is also up this week compared to last week by about 3% and is currently around $1,760. XRP is down this week compared to last week by about 6.25% and is currently around 44 cents. Major Wall Street indices, the Dow, the S&P 500, and NASDAQ all had good weeks this week, with the Dow finishing at 3.69% up, S&P 500 at 2.72% up, and NASDAQ erasing last week's losses by finishing up at 3.83%. Asia Pacific markets were mostly up this week, with the Kospi in South Korea finishing this week by about 0.25% up, and Japan's Nikkei 225 up about 1.25%. European markets finished mostly unchanged this week. The US dollar slipped a little bit this week by about 0.03% and finished this week at the 91.67 handle. Investors around the world are now considering how to move forward as stimulus in the U.S. has officially been passed. Progress towards reopening the global economy continues. Central bank monetary policy has become clearer, but ongoing geopolitical issues loom. Let's now turn to precious metals and finance related news. On Monday, March 1st, the CME Group, which runs the COMEX, made a short but very important announcement saying that longtime COMEX approved gold and silver vault operator Scotiabank was withdrawing its New York vault from being COMEX approved, and that the withdrawal was effective immediately. The full text of the release, which is titled Withdrawal of Regularity for Gold, Silver, Platinum, and Palladium, is as follows. Quote, notice hereby is given that the New York Mercantile Exchange, Inc. and Commodity Exchange, Inc., collectively the exchanges, received a request from the Bank of Nova Scotia to voluntarily withdraw their approved gold, silver, platinum, and palladium regularity at their Jamaica NY facility. Manfra, Tordella, and Brokers, Inc. will assume responsibility for the registered and eligible material at this facility effective immediately. This withdrawal is effective immediately, end quote. Manfra, Tordella, and Brooks, also known as MTB, is a New York-based bullion dealer which is also run as a COMEX approved precious metals vault in the International Gem Tower at 50 West 47th Street in Midtown Manhattan. Since 2000, MTB has been part of the Swiss MKS PAMP group. On the same day, March 1st, 2021, that Scotiabank withdrew its vault from being COMEX approved, MTB and its parent company, the Swiss-based MKS PAMP group, both made announcements on their websites that MTB had, quote, completed the strategic acquisition of a leading North American financial institution's COMEX-approved depository and logistics center, including a world-class 15,000 square foot secure facility that will give them proximity to major international and domestic logistics hubs, additional vaulting capacity, and experienced staff, end quote. The acquisition, said MTB MKS PAMP, helps offer enhanced depository and fulfillment services to COMEX warrant holders, financial institutions, industrial, and bullion clients. In effect, without stating the name of Scotiabank, MTB MKS PAMP confirmed that it had taken over the Scotiabank's COMEX-approved vault located near the JFK International Airport. The transfers from Scotia to MTB were most pronounced in silver, where a huge 1,004 tons of silver, which had been in the registered category under Scotia, came into the registered category of MTB. Prior to the transfer, MTB was reportedly only holding about 1.23 million ounces in registered. So the transfer from Scotia gave MTB a new registered total of about 33.5 million ounces, or 27 times more silver than it had previously held. This was the highest registered silver holding of any COMEX approved vault operator, even ahead of JP Morgan's claimed 32.5 million ounces of holdings. In gold, following the transfers from Scotiabank, MTB now has about 2.46 million ounces in total gold COMEX inventory, which is an increase of approximately 87% of its pre-transfer holdings. Platinum and palladium in the Scotia vault has also been added to the MTB totals, and the latest figures for MTB now have a total of 112,378 ounces of platinum, nearly all of which is registered, and 9,676 ounces of palladium, all of which is registered. COMEX inventory figures for gold, silver, platinum, and palladium holdings are available for download at the COMEX's webpage in Excel format. Scotiabank has been involved in precious metals markets all around the world for decades and was one of the key players in COMEX precious metals for a very long time. But even following the New York vault sale, Scotia is still involved with COMEX, with Scotia Capital USA Inc. still being a clearing firm on the COMEX, as can be seen on the clearing firm member list and also on the COMEX delivery report. In London, Scotiabank is one of the banks that runs the LBMA, and the trigger for Scotia's withdrawal from the precious metals markets goes back to early 2015 or perhaps even earlier, when the US Department of Justice announced that it was investigating whether the Bank of Nova Scotia and other investment banks were manipulating gold and silver prices, which has subsequently been proven that they were, and later investigations, even as recent as 2020, revealed that they continued to do so by their own admission. In 2016, 2018, and in 2020, in many countries and continents around the world, Scotiabank, along with the likes of Barclays, JP Morgan Chase & Company, Deutsche Bank, have all been investigated by the US Department of Justice Antitrust Division and have faced class action lawsuits from investors around the world for market manipulation and price manipulation. By August 2020, the U.S. Department of Justice announced that Scotiabank had entered into a resolution with the Department of Justice to, quote, resolve criminal charges related to a price manipulation scheme involving thousands of episodes of unlawful trading activity by numerous traders in the precious metals futures contracts markets, end quote. According to Chief Robert A. Zink of the Justice Department's Criminal Division Fraud Section, quote, for over 8 years, Scotiabank traders placed thousands of orders for precious metals futures contracts in an attempt to manipulate prices for their own and the bank's benefit and to deceive other market participants, end quote. Another quote, quote, today, Scotiabank has admitted to their role in a massive price manipulation scheme aimed at falsely manufacturing the prices of precious metals futures contracts to serve the bank's interests, said Assistant Director in Charge William F. Sweeney Jr. of the FBI's New York field office. Continuing on, he said, the bank's actions were designed to lead others to trade in ways that they never would have without what was believed to be legitimate market activity, end quote. This echoes the same admission of guilt over the same period of time and a fine that JP Morgan agreed to with the Department of Justice around the same period of time. Again, on the same day that the COMEX and MTB/MKS PAMP vault announcements came, Wells Fargo announced that, quote, it has expanded its precious metals trading business, filling in gaps in the market left by Scotiabank, end quote. Despite this exit, Scotiabank is still a market-making member of the LBMA in gold and silver, still a member of the fractionally backed paper gold and silver trading, the London Precious Metals Clearing Limited, and still involved in LBMA precious metals vaulting in London, even though Scotiabank, like UBS, do not have their own vaults. They utilize their accounts with one of the LBMA custodians or the Bank of England. In addition, Scotia is still a market-making member of the London Platinum and Palladium market. According to journalist Ronan Manley, quote, it's as if Scotia hasn't really exited the precious metals market at all, just discreetly sold its precious metals vault in New York to another party and quietly slipped out of the COMEX door while transferring over 30 million ounces of silver to MTB/MKS PAMP as the hashtag silver squeeze intensifies, end quote. As previously reported on this show, U.S. gold and silver demand and sales figures from the U.S. Mint show that gold and silver demand, as well as the sales figures from the U.S. Mint, are at record high numbers. Some numbers indicate a 25-year high, while others are at all-time highs. This trend is also reflected in the sales figures for gold and silver, which have recently been reported by the Perth Mint in Western Australia. For the opening months of 2021, gold bullion sales for the Perth Mint were at their highest levels in 10 years, and silver sales were at their third highest level in the past 10 years for the opening months of 2021. This data from the US, Australia, and other countries such as the United Kingdom shows us that record demand for physical gold and silver bullion isn't just concentrated on one country or one continent. 2020 was also a noteworthy year for China's economy and in particular its gold market. China's gold market is one of the top 3 gold markets in the world consistently. And if what happened in China's gold market last year is a good indicator, it could identify possible trends for the nation's gold demand in 2021. So let's take a look at what happened in 2020. The Shanghai gold benchmark price had a stronger year, yet it remained at a wide discount to the LBMA gold price when measured in the same currency. China's wholesale gold demand was weaker than in 2019, despite improvements after Q1 amid the significant reduction in the spread of the COVID-19 pandemic and its economic recovery. Gold's average monthly trading volumes reached a record high last year in China, and China's gold ETF market kept expanding, attracting an inflow of $16 trillion in the year. In addition, some experts expect China's gold demand to grow in 2021, chiefly due to China's economic recovery, which is expected to continue as policy support remains in place, and stimulation of consumer markets, a priority positioned by Chinese policymakers for the coming years. The annual In Gold We Trust report is now available in its preview iteration, and the full report will be available on May 27th. Since 2007, the annual In Gold We Trust report has been regarded as the standard work for every interested gold investor. But the In Gold We Trust report is much more. Each year, the report undertakes a comprehensive macroeconomic analysis and examines trends of the present, learns from the past with an eye on the future. To understand the fundamental workings of the financial and economic system, one must explore and critique what is going on. Every year, the In Gold We Trust report looks at the top issues in the financial world. In its method of analysis, it roughly follows the Austrian School of Economics. It tries to give the reader a very holistic picture, which should allow them to understand not only the topic itself, but greater issues that we face as a whole right now. In order to convey this knowledge, new topics are examined every year. But there are also classics which get a safe place in the Gold We Trust report every year. If you're interested in looking at the previous year in Gold We Trust report, I'll leave a link in the description of the YouTube video so you can check and see what is offered there. There's an extended version and a compact version available for download in PDF format on their website. Now let's move on to general news and current events. The Senate version of U.S. President Joe Biden's $1.9 trillion stimulus package has passed in the House after 8 Democratic senators last week joined Senate Republicans to pass Biden's COVID relief package, but voted down even the possibility of the proposed 5-year phase-in of a federal $15 minimum wage increase.
Miss Cinema. No.
The $15 minimum wage increase was a key campaign promise of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. The U.S. federal minimum wage was last raised nearly 12 years ago, and the minimum wage has only increased by $2.10 over the past 24 years. Over the same period of time, inflation in the U.S. has outpaced the minimum wage by 22% and has led to a decrease in purchasing power of low-wage earners in the U.S., who have lost nearly a quarter of their purchasing power. There's been mounting pressure for the governor of the U.S. state of New York, Andrew Cuomo, to resign from political adversaries and allies alike, including both Democratic U.S. senators from the state, as a 7th accuser has now come forward, and the alleged offenses now include not only sexual harassment, but also sexual assault. This comes after the state legislature stripped Cuomo of emergency powers granted to him during the COVID crisis, which also led to scandals of Governor Cuomo allegedly concealing nursing home deaths related to the coronavirus in order to falsely boost the outcome of his efforts and downplay the deaths among the most vulnerable segments of the population. Andrew denies the sexual assault charges, but still has yet to make an appearance, as he has regularly in the past on his little brother's CNN TV show. Chris Cuomo, the little brother of Andrew Cuomo, has a show on CNN, which has also not discussed this topic as it's been busy covering the topic of why Oprah Winfrey's interview with British royals has apparently struck a nerve with some people or something. U.S. Senator Marco Rubio on Friday became the first high-profile Republican lawmaker to support a growing push to unionize Amazon.com workers in the U.S. state of Alabama after several Democratic lawmakers visited the company's facility last week. An election in Pakistan's Senate was briefly disrupted after opposition politicians said they had found, quote, spy cameras hidden in a voting booth. Prime Minister Imran Khan's party, Pakistan's Tehreek-e-Insaf (PTI), and the opposition coalition traded blame with each other over the hidden cameras. The military junta who seized control in the nation of Myanmar has, according to Amnesty International, been reportedly using increasingly tyrannical, brutal, and violent tactics to crack down on protesters across the country, including public execution of unarmed civilians who have surrendered, among other things. Nearly 70 people have died since the coup happened. The military junta that outrules Myanmar has close ties to China, and the leaders of the United States, India, Australia, and Japan, a group known as the Quad, vowed to work together to restore democracy in Myanmar, saying, quote, as long-standing supporters of Myanmar and its people, we emphasize the urgent need to restore democracy and the priority of strengthening democratic resilience, end quote, in a statement released by the White House. A spokesman for the military junta did not answer phone calls from Reuters seeking a comment. A U.S. federal judge on Friday temporarily blocked the Department of Defense from forcing American investors to divest from Chinese smartphone maker Xiaomi Corp. On the grounds that the company has ties to China's military. The Canadian judge in Huawei CFO Meng Wanzhou's U.S. extradition case rejected her request to admit as evidence Huawei employee statements that contradict a U.S. claim she misled bankers about the company's business in Iran, a ruling said on Friday. Now let's move on to community news and notes. Cheshire Keith was recently diagnosed with diabetes and will need to take a temporary break from creating YouTube content because of the effects of this disease, which have seen him admitted to the hospital and have affected his eyesight. Please do what you can to cheer him up, wish him well. Sadly, the content creator Prepper Jack has decided to leave YouTube, and there have been a number of other channels which have disappeared or no longer make content. I just offer a message to any content creator out there that I hope you do this in a fun and sustainable way. In another sad loss, Silver Husky this past week had his final auction, but continues his venture with Juice Stacker and DOA called the Metal Merchant. The Metal Merchant has received a number of very positive reviews from several stacking channels, including Inefficient Stacker, Pistol Pack and Pilot, Lucy Stacks, and others. Speaking of Lucy Stacks, who I recently discovered is my twin sister from another mister, her and I have both recently passed 600 subscribers, so on behalf of my sister and myself, I would like to thank all of the subscribers and viewers and supporters of our channels, and also props. Aloha Stacker is attempting to reach 4,000 watch hours and will be doing live streams, has a relatively new segment that I have enjoyed very much called History Mondays, and has a lot of other great content on his channel, so go ahead and check it out. I've also noticed that I have recently been unsubscribed from a number of channels that I regularly watch, so I am resubscribing, and I urge you to check your subscription list to make sure that you're all still subscribed to the channels that you like. This episode was brought to you by Juice's Juicy Juice. There's no actual liquid in the container because it's all psychological. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Leave your thoughts in the comments section. Next weekend is my weekend off, so I will catch you all in 2 weeks for the next weekly Restack.
I sip slow with no ice, don't want it watered down. Saturdays at the park, it's a gay fade. Dominoes, jokers, deuce, deuce if we play spades. They shooting dice, trying to come up on a payday. Head on a swivel if I to stay late. Neighborhood fine line, Lincoln Park skylines.